Hey, my name is Ethan Carter. I'm 22 years old and I live in a quiet suburb just outside Chicago. It's the kind of place where the streets are lined with old maple trees and everyone still waves when they drive past. I graduated college 6 months ago with a degree in graphic design. Instead of moving straight into the city like most of my classmates, I decided to stay home for a while, take on freelance work, and save some money before making the big jump. It's not a bad life. Quiet, predictable. The kind of life that lets you hear your own thoughts too clearly sometimes. My best friend Ryan Brooks has been gone for almost 3 months now. He's doing an internship in another state, and even though we still text and call, the house next door feels different without him. Ryan and I have known each other since we were 8. We were the kind of friends who didn't need to talk every day to stay close. But with him gone, I started spending more time with his mom, Claire. Claire Brooks is 39. She works as a real estate agent, and she's the kind of woman who makes people do a double take without even trying. She has this warm brown hair that falls in soft waves, and she carries herself with this calm, graceful confidence that comes from knowing exactly who she is. I've known her my whole life. When I was a kid, I used to call her Mrs. Brooks and run through her kitchen chasing Ryan with video game controllers. But lately, something has shifted. I don't see her the same way anymore. It started small. Ryan asked me to keep an eye on her while he was away, so I started stopping by to help with little things around the house. Changing light bulbs, fixing a leaky faucet, helping her set up a new laptop for work. After every visit, she would insist I stay for dinner. At first, it felt normal, polite. But then we started talking, really talking. I told her about the pressure of freelancing, how I was scared I wouldn't make it in the city. She told me about her divorce, how it happened years ago but still left marks she didn't like to admit. One night we sat on her back porch until almost midnight, drinking coffee and talking about nothing important. The way the crickets sounded in summer, how the neighborhood had changed, how sometimes the quiet could feel heavier than noise. She looked at me across the table and smiled. "You've grown up, Ethan." I just nodded and looked away because every time she said my name like that, something in my chest tightened. I knew it was dangerous. She was Ryan's mother. She was 17 years older than me. But the more time we spent together, the harder it became to pretend I still saw her as just my best friend's mom. Then came the night everything changed. It was a Saturday, close to 11 o'clock. Ryan had called me earlier from out of state, his voice casual but a little worried. "Hey man, Mom went to some company party tonight. She said she'd be home by 10, but it's getting late. Can you swing by and check on her? Just make sure she got back okay?" I didn't think much of it. Claire was a grown woman, but Ryan was my best friend and I had promised to look out for her. So I grabbed my keys and drove the 2 blocks to their house. The living room light was still on when I pulled up. I knocked softly. A few seconds later, the door opened. Claire stood there in a black dress that hugged her body in all the right ways. Her hair was slightly messy, like she'd been running her fingers through it. Her cheeks were flushed pink from wine, and her eyes were different. They weren't the calm, collected eyes of the woman who sold million-dollar homes. They looked tired and lonely. "Ethan," she said, her voice softer than usual, a little slower. "You always show up when I need you." "I was just checking if you were okay. Ryan asked me to." She laughed quietly and leaned against the doorframe for balance. "I'm fine, just a little too much wine, I think." I stepped inside and closed the door behind me. The house was quiet except for the ticking of the old clock on the wall. Claire walked toward the couch but swayed slightly. I reached out without thinking and steadied her by the elbow. "Easy," I said. She looked up at me. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then she placed her hand flat against my chest, right over my heart. "You've always been so steady, Ethan, even when you were a kid." Her touch burned through my shirt. I could smell her perfume mixed with the sweet scent of red wine on her breath. My pulse jumped under her palm. "Claire," I said carefully, "maybe you should sit down." She didn't move. Instead, she looked at me like she was seeing something she'd been trying not to see for a long time. "Do you know how long it's been since someone looked at me the way you do?" I swallowed hard. "I don't know what you mean." "Yes, you do." Her voice was barely above a whisper. Before I could respond, she slid her hand up to the back of my neck and pulled me down. The kiss wasn't rushed. It was slow, deliberate, and full of everything she'd been holding back. Her lips were soft and warm, tasting faintly of wine. For a split second, my brain short-circuited. Every late-night conversation, every lingering glance, every time I'd caught myself staring at her when she wasn't looking, it all crashed into this one moment. Then reality hit me like cold water. She was drunk. She was Ryan's mother. And I was standing in their living room with her mouth on mine. I gently placed my hands on her shoulders and pulled back. "Claire, you're drunk." Her eyes widened and I watched the realization dawn on her face. The flush on her cheeks deepened, but this time it wasn't from the wine. "Oh my God," she whispered, stepping back so fast she almost stumbled. "Ethan, I didn't mean to." "It's okay," I said quickly, even though my heart was hammering so hard I could barely hear myself. "No, it's not okay. I crossed a line. I shouldn't have." She turned away, pressing her fingers to her lips like she could erase what just happened. Her hands were shaking. I felt something twist in my chest. Not anger, not disgust. Just this heavy, aching sadness. Because I knew that kiss hadn't come from alcohol. It had come from years of loneliness she'd been carrying alone. I walked to the kitchen, poured her a glass of water, and brought it back. She took it without meeting my eyes. "Drink this," I said quietly. "You'll feel better." She sipped it in silence. I sat on the arm of the couch, giving her space. After a few minutes, she finally spoke. "Please don't tell Ryan." "I won't." She nodded, still not looking at me. "I'm sorry, Ethan. I don't know what came over me. I wanted to tell her the truth. That I wasn't sorry. That part of me had wanted that kiss for longer than I was willing to admit. But I couldn't. Not when she was like this. Not when the guilt was already written all over her face. So I just said, 'Get some sleep, Claire. I'll lock the door on my way out.'" She nodded again. Before I left, she whispered one more thing so softly I almost missed it. "Thank you for stopping." I drove home with my hands tight on the steering wheel. My mind wouldn't stop replaying the moment her lips touched mine. The way she had looked at me. The way my body had reacted before my brain caught up. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling for hours. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't thinking of Claire Brooks as Ryan's mother anymore. And that scared me more than anything. I woke up the next morning with a strange weight in my chest. It wasn't guilt. Not exactly. It was more like the feeling you get when you've stepped over an invisible line, and you're not sure if you can step back. The house was quiet. Sunlight filtered through the half-closed blinds, casting long stripes across my bedroom floor. I reached for my phone on the nightstand and stared at the screen for a long time. I wanted to text her, but every message I started typing felt wrong. "Are you okay?" Too casual. "About last night?" Too direct. "Do you remember what happened?" Way too dangerous. In the end, I didn't send anything. I told myself she probably needed space. She had been drunk. She had made a mistake. The best thing I could do was pretend it never happened and let her come back to herself on her own terms. I was wrong. Around noon, Ryan called me on video. His face filled the screen, smiling like nothing in the world was wrong. "Hey, bro. You went over to check on Mom last night, right?" She texted me at like 1 in the morning saying she got home safe, but I couldn't reach her this morning. I was starting to worry. I kept my expression neutral. "Yeah, I stopped by. She was a little tipsy, but she was fine. I made sure she got to the couch okay." Ryan let out a relieved breath. "Man, thank God. I knew I could count on you. She's been working crazy hours lately. I feel bad being so far away." He kept talking, but I barely heard him. All I could think about was the way Claire's hand had felt against my chest. The look in her eyes right before she kissed me. The way she had whispered, "Thank you for stopping," like it had cost her something. Ryan trusted me completely, and I was sitting here with a secret that would probably break his heart if he ever found out. After we hung up, I couldn't stay inside anymore. I grabbed the trash and walked out to the curb. Claire's car was still in the driveway next door. The living room curtains were drawn tight. I stood there for a second, staring at the house, then pulled out my phone and typed before I could overthink it. "Me? Are you okay? If you need anything, just let me know." The message showed as delivered. I waited. Nothing. It wasn't until almost 9 o'clock that night that my phone finally buzzed. Claire. I'm fine. Thank you, Ethan. And I'm sorry about last night. I stared at the word fine. Then at the period at the end. It felt cold, distant, like she was already trying to rebuild the wall between us. The next few days were worse. Every time I stepped outside, Claire seemed to disappear. If I was mowing the lawn, she would suddenly need to run an errand. If I waved from the driveway, she would give me a polite nod and hurry inside. When I texted to ask about the laptop she had asked me to look at weeks ago, her reply was short and formal. Claire. No need. I managed to fix it myself. Thank you. She had gone back to calling herself I instead of Co. Back to being Mrs. Brooks, the woman who kept perfect distance, the mother of my best friend. It bothered me more than I expected. I wasn't upset because I wanted something to happen between us. I was upset because I hated the idea of her feeling ashamed every time she saw me. Like she had done something unforgivable. Like I was disgusted by her. One afternoon I ran into her at the grocery store near our neighborhood. She was standing in front of the produce section wearing a soft cream sweater and jeans, her hair tied back in a low ponytail. She looked beautiful in that quiet, effortless way she always did. When she saw me, her hand froze halfway to a bag of apples. Ethan, she said. Her voice was polite. Too polite. Claire. We stood there for a moment, the hum of the refrigerator cases filling the silence between us. Can we talk? I asked quietly. She glanced around like she was afraid someone might overhear. There's nothing to talk about. Yes, there is. She took a slow breath and finally met my eyes. Ethan, what happened that night was a mistake. I had too much to drink. I crossed a line I never should have crossed. You're Ryan's best friend. You're practically family. I know. Then you also know the best thing for both of us is to forget it ever happened. I studied her face. There was something in her expression, a tightness around her mouth, a flicker in her eyes, that didn't match her words. Do you really want to forget it? I asked. Claire didn't answer right away. She looked down at the apples in her hand, then placed them carefully into her cart. I have to go, she said. She walked away without looking back. I stood there in the middle of the produce aisle watching her disappear around the corner, and for the first time, I understood something I had been too afraid to admit. The kiss hadn't created anything new. It had only revealed something that had already been there for a long time. Something both of us had been pretending not to see. I lasted 6 days before I couldn't take the silence anymore. Every morning I woke up thinking about her. Every night I lay in bed replaying the way she had looked at me on her porch the night she kissed me. The shame in her eyes. The way her voice had trembled when she asked me not to tell Ryan. I hated that she was carrying all of that alone. I hated that she thought I regretted what happened. So on the 7th day, I wrote her a letter. It wasn't long. I didn't know how to say everything I was feeling, so I kept it simple. Claire, I don't think badly of you. I stopped that night because you were drunk, and I didn't want you to wake up regretting it. If you want to forget what happened, I'll respect that. But if you're avoiding me because you think I'm disgusted or ashamed, that's not true. I'm not. I just don't want to lose you from my life either. Ethan. I folded the paper, slid it into an envelope, and dropped it into her mailbox on my way to pick up groceries. Then I went home and tried not to check my phone every 5 minutes. It was a little after 8 when I heard the knock. I opened the door and found Claire standing on my front porch. She wasn't wearing makeup. Her hair was loose and slightly messy from the evening breeze. She had on an oversized gray cardigan and jeans, and she looked more beautiful than I had ever seen her. I read your letter, she said quietly. I stepped aside. Do you want to come in? She shook her head. I'd rather talk out here. If I go inside, I'm afraid I'll lose my nerve. We sat on the 2 wooden chairs on my porch. The night was cool and still. A single streetlight glowed at the end of the driveway, casting soft shadows across the lawn. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Finally, Claire broke the silence. I remember everything. My heart slammed against my ribs. Everything? She nodded, staring down at her hands folded in her lap. I remember kissing you. I remember you stopping me. I remember the way you looked at me afterward, not with disgust, not with pity, just kind. That was the part that made me feel the most ashamed. Why? Because I had hoped you wouldn't hate it. The words hung in the air between us. I could hear my own pulse in my ears. Claire let out a shaky breath and finally looked at me. I like you, Ethan. I've liked you for a while now. I told myself it was nothing, that you were just being kind because you're a good person, that you were Ryan's best friend and I had no right to feel anything. But that night, I stopped pretending. I swallowed hard. I like you too. She blinked, like she hadn't expected me to say it out loud. I've liked you for a long time, I continued. I just kept telling myself I wasn't allowed to. Because of Ryan, because of the age difference, because I didn't want to make things weird between us. But after that night, I couldn't lie to myself anymore. Claire's eyes were shining. She blinked quickly and looked away. We're both cowards, aren't we? I smiled, even though my chest felt tight. Yeah, pretty much. We sat in silence again. The crickets chirped in the grass. A car drove past somewhere down the street. When Claire spoke again, her voice was softer. If we do this, if we keep going, it can't be some dirty little secret. I won't live like that. And Ryan, he's going to be hurt. I know. I don't want to hurt my son, Ethan, but I also don't want to keep pretending I don't feel anything when I see you. I reached over and gently took her hand. She didn't pull away. Then we go slow, I said. We figure it out together. No pressure, no rushing. Claire looked at our joined hands for a long moment. Slow, she repeated, like she was testing the word. She stood up a few minutes later, saying she should get back. I walked her to the edge of the porch. She paused at the top step and turned to face me. Ethan. Yeah? I want to ask you something. Okay? If I hadn't been drunk that night, would you have kissed me? I stepped closer, leaving just enough space between us that she could still walk away if she wanted to. No, I said honestly. Claire's eyebrows drew together slightly. I continued, because I would have waited for you to ask me when you were completely sober, when you knew exactly what you were choosing. She looked at me for a long time. The porch light caught in her eyes, turning them warm and golden. Then I'm asking now. I didn't answer with words. I leaned down and kissed her. This time there was no wine, no haze, no fear of what would happen in the morning. Just the two of us standing under the soft glow of the porch light, finally choosing each other with clear eyes and steady hearts. Her lips were soft and warm. She tasted like the peppermint tea she always drank in the evenings. When I pulled back, she rested her forehead against my chest and let out a long, shaky breath. We're in trouble now, she whispered. I wrapped my arms around her, careful and gentle. Yeah, I murmured into her hair, but at least this time, it's the kind of trouble I don't mind getting into. She laughed quietly against my shirt. I held her a little tighter, knowing that whatever came next, Ryan, the town, the questions, the complications, we would face it together. For the first time in weeks, the weight in my chest felt lighter. For the next 2 weeks, we kept our promise. We went slow. No overnight stays, no rushed declarations, no pretending we had everything figured out. We met in public places at first, a small cafe on the edge of town, the old bookstore downtown, the park by the lake. Sometimes we cooked simple dinners at Claire's house, just the two of us, talking for hours about nothing and everything. The more time we spent together, the clearer it became that this wasn't some fleeting attraction. It was something real, something that had been quietly growing for a long time. Claire started opening up more. One evening while we were washing dishes side by side, she told me about her marriage to Ryan's father, how they had fallen apart slowly, not because they stopped loving each other overnight, but because they had become two people who exhausted each other. After the divorce, she had spent nearly 20 years being a mother, a real estate agent, a reliable neighbor. Everything except Claire. She had forgotten she was allowed to want something for herself. Some days I would look in the mirror, she said quietly, and feel like I was just playing a role. Mother, professional, good neighbor, but not really me. I reached over and took her hand, wet from the dishwater. With me, you're always Claire. She looked at me for a long moment, her eyes soft and a little scared. That's why I was so afraid of you, Ethan. I thought we could keep going like that for a while longer. Quiet, careful, hidden. Then Ryan called. I'm coming home this weekend. Surprise visit for Mom. You free? Come over for dinner. It's been too long, man. I froze. I couldn't say no. I couldn't make up an excuse. Ryan was my best friend, and I had already been lying to him for weeks. That Saturday night, I drove to Claire's house with my stomach in knots. Ryan opened the door and pulled me into a hug like he always did. Bro, finally! I hugged him back, but my chest felt tight. Claire was in the kitchen wearing a white button-down shirt and jeans, her hair pulled back neatly. When our eyes met across the room, I saw the same fear I was feeling. Dinner started normally enough. Ryan talked about his internship. I made jokes to keep the mood light. Claire asked her son the usual motherly questions. But then Ryan noticed something small. I had reached over and taken a hot plate from Claire's hands before she could touch it. Careful, I said quietly. Claire froze. Ryan looked between us. The air in the room shifted. After dinner, Ryan stood up and jerked his head toward the back door. Ethan, outside, now. My heart dropped. We walked out into the backyard. The night was cold. Ryan stood with his back to me for a long moment before he finally turned around. Is there something going on between you and my mom? I didn't answer right away, and that silence was answer enough. Ryan's face changed completely. The easy smile disappeared. His eyes went hard. You're fucking kidding me. Ryan? You're my best friend. I know. She's my mother. I know. He let out a short, bitter laugh, his eyes shining with anger. So what, you just decided to go for it anyway? I took a step forward, but he stepped back. Let me explain. Explain what? That you like my mom? That this isn't weird as hell? That I should be happy for you two? Claire stepped out onto the back porch. Her face was pale. Ryan. He turned to her. You knew? She stood straight, even though I could see her hands trembling at her sides. Yes. Ryan stared at her like she had slapped him. Since when? Claire was quiet for a second. Not long, but long enough that I didn't want to keep lying to you. Ryan shook his head, his voice cracking. So, you just… What? You're dating my best friend now? Claire took a slow breath. Ryan, this isn't Ethan taking advantage of me, and it's not me being reckless. I know this is hard for you to accept, but I don't want you to think this is something dirty. Ryan looked between the two of us, his face twisted with hurt. You're dating my best friend, Mom. Yes, Claire said, her voice steady even though her eyes were glassy. And I know that hurts you. I'm sorry for that part, but I'm not sorry for having real feelings. Ryan stared at her for a long moment. Then he looked at me. I need to go. Ryan, wait. Don't. He grabbed his jacket from inside and walked straight out to his car. The engine roared to life a few seconds later. We stood there in the backyard listening to the sound of his tires on the gravel as he drove away. Claire didn't move. She just stood there with her arms wrapped around herself, staring at the empty driveway. I wanted to go to her. I wanted to pull her into my arms and tell her it would be okay. But I didn't. Because for the first time since this started, our relationship wasn't just about the two of us anymore. It had hurt someone else. Someone I had never, ever wanted to hurt. After that night, Ryan didn't speak to either of us. He didn't answer my texts. He didn't pick up when Claire called. She didn't push him. Every day she sent him the same simple message. I love you. Whenever you're ready, I'm here. I kept my distance too. Not because I wanted to, but because I knew Ryan needed space to breathe. A week later, he finally texted me. Ryan, meet me at the old basketball court, the one we used to play at in high school. When I got there, he was sitting on the old wooden bleachers holding a can of soda. I sat a few feet away. For a long time, neither of us said anything. The court was empty, the paint on the lines faded from years of sun and rain. Finally, Ryan spoke. I still think this is crazy. I know. I thought you were the one person I could trust more than anyone. I never wanted to betray you, but you hid it from me. I nodded. Yeah, and I'm sorry. Ryan looked down at the court. Mom's been lonely for a long time. I knew that. I just didn't want to see it. Because if she was fine, then I didn't have to feel guilty about leaving and living my own life. He let out a short laugh, but there was no humor in it. Now she looks happier than she has in years, and I hate that it's because of you. I didn't say anything. There was nothing I could say that would make it easier. Ryan turned to look at me. If you ever hurt her, I won't. He studied my face for a long moment. Don't make promises like that. You don't know what's going to happen. You're right, I said. I don't. But I can promise you this. I'll never treat her like a secret. I'll never treat her like a mistake. And if this ends one day, I'll still treat her with the respect she deserves. Ryan was quiet. Then he exhaled slowly. I need time. I'll give you as much as you need. He stood up and dusted off his jeans. And stop calling her Ba-A in front of me. It sounds weird as hell. I laughed just a little. Ryan almost smiled. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. But it was a door cracked open. 3 months later, things were still messy. But they were better. Ryan still made a face sometimes when he saw Claire and me holding hands. He still said things like, "You're a disgusting traitor," but now he said it with more sarcasm than anger. He started coming over for dinner again. We watched basketball together. He even started calling me Ke Fan Boy Jang Het, like it was an inside joke. Claire had changed too, not into someone new, just more like herself. She smiled easier. She left the windows open in the mornings. She planted flowers along the fence between our houses. And she stopped calling me Khan. When she said my name now, it sounded different, like I belonged to her in a way that had nothing to do with Ryan. One warm summer evening, we sat on the same porch where everything had started. Claire rested her head on my shoulder. The air smelled like cut grass and honeysuckle. Do you ever think about that night? She asked softly. The night you were drunk? She elbowed me lightly. Don't call it that. I smiled. Yeah, I think about it a lot. Do you hate me for kissing you? No. Do you think I was stupid? A little. She laughed. I took her hand. But I'm grateful you did. Because it forced both of us to stop being cowards. Claire was quiet for a moment, then she looked up at me. I'm glad you stopped that night. I nodded. I wanted our first real kiss to be one you chose with a clear head. She leaned in and kissed me, slow, certain, no alcohol, no fear, no shame, just us. From across the fence, Ryan's door opened. He poked his head out, saw us, and immediately made a disgusted face. Oh my God, can you two not do that right in front of my house? Claire laughed so hard she had to lean into my chest. I laughed too. Ryan shook his head, but before he went back inside, I heard him mutter something under his breath. But I'm happy for you, Mom. Claire went still. Then I felt her shoulders shake. She was crying, not sad tears. Just the kind that come when something you've been carrying for a long time finally feels a little lighter. I wrapped my arms around her and held her tighter, and in that moment, I understood something I hadn't fully grasped until then. Some stories begin at the wrong time, from a drunk kiss, from loneliness, from a moment of weakness. But if the people in them are kind enough to stop when they should, brave enough to tell the truth and patient enough to face the consequences, then sometimes, from the most unlikely beginning, something real and right can still grow. Claire lifted her head and looked at me, her eyes wet but smiling. We made it, she whispered. I kissed her forehead. Yeah, I said, we did.